Sweet, eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Tonight, we are here to continue the Rogue Ways mini-series exploration of the various families of the Illuminati. Last week, we did an expose on the asshole Astors, and tonight we are going to continue ripping the mask off of our masters as we peer under their dirty sheets of the DuPonts. It promises to get dark tonight with his family of control, power, and intrigue, and we have some top-notch guests to light our way down that dusky path. So let's say hello to our friends, starting with John Brisson. John is a longtime friend to the show and a traveler in the circuits of conspiracy culture. John cares about the culture of your guts as well and is a practitioner of healing arts. And I know he's already helped so many of you listening with his book, Fix Your Gut, or his website, fixyourgut.com. John, thank you so much for being here once again and for all of your healing advice.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure to be on Rogue Ways. And tonight we're going to take down the DuPont family, which I cannot stand. So that's why I'm here. I'm here to take them down with you guys. So let's do it.
And next, we welcome a first-timer to Rogue Ways and a long-timer to the community we roam within, Michael Wan. Listeners will remember Michael from his website and body of work related to the Susquehanna River alchemy revelations. Michael is a badass interpreter of the esoteric and a top-level analyst of the hidden world. Michael, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to join you and John and have a good conversation.
Awesome. So we have our pointless question of the episode, as always. I'm wondering what you guys think it is that Ruth Bader Ginsburg actually needs instead of a donated rib or kidney.
She needs the blood of infants and adrenochrome. I don't know. Something got her back and working the next day. Or working. I guess she was working from home. But something. But then again, let's just say that. Let's be honest here. If something does sadly happen to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she's just going to be replaced by one of Trump's CMP members for a Supreme Court pick, just as bad as Kavanaugh. So we'll definitely see what happens. But yeah, I'm pretty sure she got some fresh blood and some fresh adrenochrome, and she's rip-roaring ready to go. So.
She must have messed up to get so low on her supply of adrenochrome that she got all fucked up in the first place.
She's just so old. It wears down. Eventually.
She's like the most skeletal human I've ever seen still functioning in the world, if you can call it functioning.
That is true.
What do you think, Michael? What does she need?
Well, what captures my attention more so is when did that movie about her, when was that released?
Yeah, it was not that long ago. Yeah, I was wondering the same thing.
Exactly. So that's what seems to capture my attention, or the blips on the social awareness sort of thing. Like, you haven't heard of her for years, and then all of a sudden, bing bam. So how they're related, I don't know, but I find that more an intriguing aspect to look at it.
That is really interesting.
It's all part of the theater as well.
Or maybe she needs to time travel and get that movie out of the way. Maybe it's the movie that's killing her.
Michael is right, though. It is always a school play, right? It's always some sort of theater for us sheeple to fight about and to gossip at the water cooler. That's all it really truly is.
It's true. I just like everybody in the world, I think she probably needs some love. I'm too nice. I'm even loving to batty old, horrible, horrible people.
I concur. I'm on the same page as you.
Thanks.
I walk that path.
So maybe she'll get some. Who knows? She could even do something great in the world. Ruth, we're counting on you. Stop drinking baby infant blood and do something good.
Yeah.
All right. So let's start with the DuPonts and where they come from. What do you guys know about their start?
Well, the DuPont family, to my knowledge, was very big in France. And of course, when we talk about them later, we'll talk about their involvement in the French Revolution, and later a lot of chemical problems that we have now tackling our water, like Teflon, for example. Chemical X, one of the things that was coming out of the DuPont Chemours plant right down the road from me, that was into the drinking water, that was a Teflon derivative that was causing a lot of problems. But I mean, what have the DuPonts not been involved with when it comes to European history or American history? They've been involved in a lot of nefarious ways.
Yeah, I got a lot of French history from them, and that was basically and back in like 1700s. And as far as I can tell, that's their earliest mention. Obviously, I always assumed that these families go back way, way further than that, but we just can't maybe trace them directly.
Yeah, but the DuPonts had a lot to do with like I said, the French Revolution. Possibly beforehand, they existed in France too, as well. A lot to do probably with the Knights of Malta, and a lot of French early Brotherhood of the Snake, Illuminati, whatever you want to call it.
So, what are the Knights of Malta?
The Knights of Malta were kind of an offshoot of the Knights Templar to some degree. It's kind of like a Catholic organization, and a lot of the Knights of Malta were doing a lot during the Crusades. And everything. So yeah, it's interesting to me that like if I trace my bloodline, which is Brisson, back to that area too. I did try to do a little bit of the DuPonts back further than, of course, we have the internet now, which Fritz Springmeier didn't have. But he wasn't able possibly to get much back, and it was very similar. Like my ancestor was part of the French Navy back in like the 1200s, 1300s, and had to bring a Knight of Malta, head Knight of Malta member from one part of the Europe to the other. But if you look at the DuPont family way back then, they seem to be also related to one of the bloodlines I guess you guys are going to talk about later to some degree, which is the Mergevinian bloodline. My French is bad for being, but yeah, they tie it together too as well. But that'll be more when you guys talk about the Merovingian bloodline. There you go. But yes, they seem to be around further than when, because if you read Fritz Springmeier's book, 13 Bloodlines Illuminati, I've read it 2 or 3 times. It talks about the start of the DuPonts being more with the French Revolution and not really anything beforehand. But if you look, there seems to be a whole lot of mysticism in their family, a lot of I don't want to say witches, but like a lot of
like occult mysticism, sort of
negative
magic
mysticism
heavy
type associated with them. Not like positive seeing or anything like that, but really negative stuff. And Fritz does talk a lot about that later, but that seems to have been there since the founding of France. So I don't think the DuPonts were a family that just showed up in the 1700s. A powerful family, usually that doesn't happen. They've been there long beforehand. Why Fritz didn't talk about them beforehand really in depth, other than that, I don't know. But he didn't. So.
There was something. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
So there was a video I saw, and this had to have been at least a year ago, and I couldn't find it when I was prepping for this week. But it went down the line which John was referring to, and I can't verify what it was said, but the people put the video together, they seem to at least do a decent job with their production, and it followed the maternal line from France, like starting in the 1700s, and it began with like the DuPont name being more so of a placement, like of Pont, like that was a specific place, and I can't recall the details, but they then linked it to another name, and unfortunately I can't recall that right now. But that is where a lot of this kind of, if you want to call black magic lineage and kind of destructive mysticism comes into and through this family line.
Interesting. I wonder where Pont is, or what that would mean. Like if they're of Pont.
It was, I want to say, it was somewhere near the coast, like on the southern, like near Nice or in that area, and it was making reference to, I don't know why a bridge is coming to my memory, but something like that. But yeah, it shouldn't probably be too difficult to track down if this is, striking someone's fancy.
Yeah. Interesting. Cool. Well,
I mean,
oh, go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to lose. I was just saying, they go back far. Now, how far? Like, Michael was saying, I only found bits and pieces of it. But yeah, it's just when you have all these, it seemed to be that they were involved with more. The DuPonts were involved more with the Catholic side of things to some degree, more than they were involved with anything else. And then, of course, you get into the Knights Templar and then other spinoff groups for them, or other parts of groups as well. Like Order of Malta, the Knights of Malta, and everything, and you get more spinoffs from there too as well. But yeah, it seems that they were involved a lot with the Mergevinian family. But what involvement there was, it was very murky. I couldn't really find a lot of information on that, sadly. So it seems like that's been suppressed, but I'm pretty sure it exists.
And I thought the Merovingian thing was not even factual. Like, I thought it was a possibility that it existed and that it would be the descendants of Jesus if he had kids.
See, the descendants of Jesus thing is where it gets murky, but the actual existence of the Mergevinian bloodline seems to be legit.
Oh, okay.
It gets murky more of whether they say that they're directly from kind of like the whole what's the name of that book? Dan Brown wrote it.
The Da Vinci Code.
The Da Vinci Code. That's kind of a little bit based a little bit more on kind of is it true type aspect of their bloodline scene there, that Mary Magdalene was pregnant and escaped to France or Gaul. But the bloodline is still there, and Fritz does reference it as a bloodline. So
I did not realize that.
I think it's his 13th bloodline, if I remember, or one separate from it. But yeah, it is in the book, if I remember. It's talked about.
I'm the type of person, like, I read that book like 12 years ago, and then I'm rereading it a little now. I don't remember any of this stuff. And in like 2 weeks from now, I won't remember it again. So that's just how I roll through life. But I don't think Jesus had kids. I'm just going to throw that out there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about, but I just don't think it happened. So
I'm going to throw out that it is possible that he did. So I'm going to do a counterpoint that it is, yes, because in order for him to be a rabbi, he would have had to have been married. So it is a possibility that he could have had kids with Mary Magdalene. That doesn't negate that he was killed on the cross. It just could be separate from that. That's all.
But the alchemical process of becoming a master requires that you don't spill your seed.
That's not true.
Oh, in some mystical orders like Gnosticism, it is.
It depends on your version of Gnosticism. There's many different versions of Gnosticism. So
that's true too.
It depends on that.
Oh God, we could have a whole show on this. Okay, let's.
Yes. We are getting on tangents.
All right. So, how did the DuPonts maneuver throughout history? We've touched on a few little things, but what else have they done that have gotten them into power or caused trouble for the world?
Money.
There's the same bank mentioned every one of these families. I feel like. What is it?
Now you're making me think.
The United States Bank.
Yes, they did have an involvement in that as well, and of course, chemicals and petrochemicals later on too. And also, I knew Fritz Springmeier talks about the invention of gunpowder.
Yeah,
being associated with them too as well.
That's really their big thing, or how they made their money and
yes,
where they made their presence in the United States, getting the government contracts to I think was it as far back as the Revolutionary War? It was definitely the Civil War, but I can't be certain about the Revolutionary War. And then from that, they've always had their hands as death merchants. And then if you can look at that as kind of like an overview understanding in terms of like the value system or what they bring to society, whether you want to look at it as directly creating armaments,
yes,
weapons, or all of the byproducts of Teflon and all that other stuff. It's death, and it's profit from it.
Well, they've also done with revolutions too, Michael.
Yeah.
The French Revolution with siding with the Jacobins, that definitely would have caused a lot of civil unrest in France, which it did, and in doing so caused, French Revolution was a very blood-filled revolution. So yeah, I mean, they pretty much helped to start that a lot by, funding the Jacobins and working with them too. The DuPonts did. And of course, Fritz mentions that my ancestor Marquise de Lafayette was a Jacobin, which is not kind of direct relation. He's like the first cousin of my family member, which was Charles de Bresson. But Lafayette was not a Jacobin. The Jacobins imprisoned him and were talking about beheading him.
Why do we care about the Jacobins there? Like, what's...
Well, I guess if you're American, you wouldn't care about them per se. But since I have French heritage, I care about the French Revolution. But they were the ones who overthrew.
They were behind the whole plot.
Yes, originally for the French Revolution, and the DuPonts had a lot to do with that, because it was the whole. You know, you had the American Revolution, and some people could say that could have been pushed by Adam Weishaupt and Illuminati. And there's a possibility that even though there's two ways of looking at our founding fathers, they were either, a lot of them were humans, but they still wanted for the greater good, and they made the Constitution, and they made eventually the Bill of Rights afterwards, and they wanted what was best for society. Or you could look at it that majority of them were part of the Illuminati, majority of them were Freemasons, and actually it was just another wheel in the cog. It was just another experiment or school play to see how far their form of government could go. Yeah. And I mean, that's what it is with the French Revolution. You know, it was a bloodletting revolution that eventually led to a representative, a constitutional representative republic, where they don't have a monarchy like England still kind of somewhat does. You know, it's kind of a little bit different, where they kind of have they have a prime minister and a president, cabinet. You know, so it's similar to us in a lot of ways, where England, you know, they have a prime minister and a cabinet too. They still have that king and queen type monarchy type. It's kind of like a monarchy constitutional republic like hybrid that the England government has, even though they claim that the monarchy is just, you know, it doesn't have any power. It's just, you know, for
so
people
much power. If you look at the actual powers the queen has, it's pretty ridiculous. Like that woman is powerful.
But yeah, I mean, you talk about
terribly evil, powerful woman.
Irene DuPont, she was the woman who was the major printer and major organization for the Jacobins. And she was also later had a lot to do with the formation of you were talking about earlier, which was the first United States bank, and working with Hamilton, which Hamilton, of all the founding fathers, was definitely a traitor. Alexander Hamilton was, thank God he never became anything was really ever done from him or anything like that, but still nonetheless, I guess you could say that he got the United States bank put in, but I mean, it could have been much, much worse. But when you look at your founding fathers, I mean, have you guys ever heard the rumor that Weishaupt could have somehow replaced George Washington? And may have been actual, because George Washington was a horrible general. He was an abysmal general. That Weishaupt may have replaced him and stored the country to try to set
the apotheosis of George Washington.
Yes, and they say that's why there was an insurrection between some of the founding fathers, like John Adams, against Alexander Hamilton and George Washington and stuff like that. But yeah, I know that's all speculation, and we're getting off track again. But yeah, I mean, the DuPonts always had their hands in ways of steering revolutions and profiting from it, similar to the Rothschilds.
So yeah, I like that point you were making, Michael, too, where they've all of the things they have their fingers in are all very dark, evil, and it shows you their values. And then you look at the things that they've had the events that they've been behind, and then you have to wonder, like, how tainted are they then? Because we look at those revolutions as positive things, I think, or at least we're taught to look at them as positive events that created something beautiful, but then you just have to question it.
Were just bloodletting or population control to set up even greater puppet roles of government, or just to try a new control method? I mean, it's a great possibility. I mean, what about you, Michael? How do you feel about that?
Well, I always like to look through the lens of the magical and the symbolic, and going back to the role of that mysticism within the bloodline. And so it's looking at things that way, and like the sacrificial elements and that element, and not certainly there's the political aspect, and certainly there's the the testing of different types of experiments. But at the end of the day, I mean, they're directly involved with death versus like the other families that you mentioned that they're maybe indirectly involved with death. I mean, all their hands are dirty, but like, you know, if you're more concerned with interest rates and controlling, you know, economies in order to control people, that's a little bit different than, no, I'm going to actually make certain, like I got feet on the ground and make certain that there's real blood there. So that's how I see a lot of it. And when you then go and you look at some of the stories of the actual people and what I'll talk about a little bit later about the city of Wilmington itself, and looking at it through that lens, that's really what captures my attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, was Louis the 16th, was he better really than, you know, after the French Revolution, what came with it, that, or better or worse, should I say, than, you know, constitutional republic? I mean, we could debate about it all day long, you know, but the DuPonts were a major player who brought apart this revolution. Yes, so, and then we could get on a tirade too of how Bill Cooper used to, what does it really mean to be free?
Yeah, I don't see we're very free. I've actually want to believe that we are founded on some sort of positive principles of freedom and justice and equality, and that still lives somewhere inside of, especially the United States, this grand experiment we're doing here. But I'm positive that it was not free of very occult, magical, dark magic shit that is trying to steer it in the worst possible ways. I just don't think they've won yet.
I agree. I definitely agree with you on that. They won't win as long as patriots are still, you know, still alive and stuff like that and everything. And, you know, people go out and speak the truth, and that may disappear one day, but it hasn't yet. I mean, the DuPonts were friends with Thomas Jefferson. And, you know, some people love Thomas Jefferson. I think that he was a Illuminist, and he definitely was not our guy. If any of the founding fathers were our guy, quote unquote, it would have been John Adams. But that being said, I still think he was probably lumped in with the rest of them. You know, it saddens my heart when my my son, you know, loves Benjamin Franklin so much because he's taught how good Benjamin Franklin is in school, and Benjamin Franklin was probably one of the worst of them. Yeah. But, you know, you get this intermingle between like the DuPonts and the Rothschilds. You get all this intermingle between them and the founding fathers and how they played off of each other. You know, and the people that they had together, like how, you know, they intertwined, they married in with a lot of the American elite, similar to the Rothschilds, and you end up getting this kind of French, you know, American alliance, you know, and as that it left up here, as the DuPonts really contribute anything to America that's really set us apart? I don't think so.
Just like Michael said, bunch of death.
Yeah.
And non-stick cookware.
Yeah, non-stick cookware that also kills you.
That also poisons you. So we got that going for you.
So just while we're talking about like how occult and ritualistic a lot of their maneuverings have likely been, on the topic of that, what do you guys think there's a specific force? Do you think it is satanic? Like, is there...
I mean, if it's occultish in like a negative light, I mean, you can use the word Satan or whatever, but yeah, I do think there is a Brotherhood of the Snake. I think it's existed since the dawn of time, and it's definitely not like we should all be adherent, just like JFK said, which when we talk about the Kennedy family, that's when I'm going to be on too, because that one's going to be rip-roaring good time. But yeah, I mean, we should be abhorrent to secret societies, and that's what a lot of these families were about, whether they were, you know, within Freemasonry or within other groups. I mean, I can sit here and list the name of the groups, and we'll be here for a long time. You know, but yeah, I mean, they were part. It all stems from this single group. You want to call it the Illuminati. You want to call it the Brotherhood of the Snake. You want to call it, you know, ancient mystery schools. It's all connected to one another.
Who calls it the Brotherhood of the Snake? I've never heard that. I love snakes, and I'm offended that they are being
Bill Cooper, Josh Reeves. That's what it was originally called, was the Brotherhood of the Snake.
But I'm so sad for snakes.
Well, I mean, it doesn't mean you have to hate snakes or anything like that, but it's just what it's. I mean, you know, some people call it the Illuminati. It goes by many different terms, but they're all
okay.
The Jesuits, you know, they're all one group, one cohesive group that wants to plot our destruction.
It's weird because I've heard of all of them except the Brotherhood of the Snake. So it's interesting. But what do you think, Michael?
Well, yeah, I'm familiar with that term, and I always like to look at I like to read off of popular media, and particularly the stuff from like the 80s. I mean, that's to go back and look at it now with the understanding which we have, and go watch Conan the Barbarian, and that's all about the Brotherhood of the Snake. And it tells that story in this mythological perspective. And then you put in context, like, you know, that was the introduction of Arnold Schwarzenegger to the commercial public. There's some real interesting stuff going on, you know, either consciously or not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've probably seen one of the biggest representations of the Brotherhood of the Snake, which is the Caduceus, which you see that every time you go to a doctor.
Yeah, true. Ew, gross. Okay.
So,
don't go to your doctors, folks.
No, I didn't say that.
It's just like anything. There's good ones and bad ones, but like the industry as a whole is pretty foul.
Now, I believe the Brotherhood of the Snake began with Atlantis. I believe that they were originally at Atlantis, and it was, you know, the elite Atlantis, the head order. That was the Brotherhood of the Snake. I think it led to Atlantis' destruction. But there's many arguments of when the Brotherhood of Snake actually was a cohesive group. Some people say it's been in existence since the dawn of time. Others will say, like me, where it probably was Atlantis. But nonetheless, it's definitely been around. And, you know, the DuPonts were like many of the 13. Brotherhood of the Snake is just another name for the Illuminati, or the Illuminati is just another name for the Brotherhood of the Snake. It's all the same thing.
Yeah, you could call it any of these names, and they're all the same thing. I like that you point out that they have so many names for so many different organizations, but they're all serving the same end game, I believe.
Oh yeah, and we talk about the Council for National Policy later, and the DuPonts were in there. And a lot of DuPonts were Republicans, which a lot of people are not aware of. But yeah, I mean, it goes on both sides. You know, some people will say it's the CFR, some people will say it's the CMP. I think it's both of them. And they're all just one cohesive group that is there. They believe that they're doing betterment, you know, the kind of the Luciferian or the Promethean type thing, where they're trying to save humanity and save the world. To some degree, some people say they feel that way. I don't think they feel that way. Just most of it, what they're doing is just out of arrogance and out of power. But yeah, it all ties in together.
Mm-hmm. What have you guys heard about them pushing communism and their role in education in the United States and in other places, and their role in the press, or their use of the press?
Doesn't surprise me. I mean, we're the communism and fascism. They're just extreme left-right paradigm. And don't members of the Illuminati push both to create civil unrest and to create division? Just like what's going on today.
And just like they get into all those different groups, like you're talking about, same thing.
And, you know, Michael, there's tons of, like you said, pop culture references, you know, to the different divisions and everything, and trying to divide and trying to get people to either identify with extreme left or extreme right. And you see that when they're controlling the political spectrum. You know, a lot of the patriot groups used to listen to white nationalists like Willis Carto, which would be John Birch Society's CMP, you know, types, you know, militia, and that would be on the right. And then on the left, you get, you know, communism. Like they posted that clip on Facebook the other day about, you know, teaching your kids social justice at preschool, you know, and calling each other comrade and stuff like that and everything. And it's just, you get these both dialectics, the Hegelian dialectic, I guess, to come meet in the center to control people. And that's what you end up with.
Yeah. So this is what kind of struck me this read through today of the DuPont section in the Illuminati Bloodlines by Fritz Springmeier. And he said that the friend of, I think, Pierre Samuel DuPont was Henry Saint-Simon, which I guess there's an order called the Saint-Simonians. I could be misunderstanding that. But what tripped me out is way back then in the 1700s within the DuPont family and their friends, they were pushing that by the year 2000, that was the target date for the creation of the new, they just called it the New Order, I guess not the New World Order. which, side note, connects to Celine Dion's new stupid line of deathly children's clothing, where she doesn't say New World Order, she just says New Order, and I'm like, what is New Order? Is that like the new thing we're supposed to call it? But apparently it's like way back here, like in the 1700s. So by 2000, the New Order is supposed to be started. And they said that you should create 2 canals, the Suez and the Panama, both have happened, a high dam on the Nile. I don't know if that's happened or not. The technological transformation of the earth, totally happening / almost done. And the biological creation of androgynous humanoids. Like, that fucked with my head. I'm like, people in the 1700s were thinking about the creation of biologically androgynous humanoids.
Yeah, that's insane. And then also too, here's one question I would ask to both of y'all. I don't think it's ever been a quote unquote new world order. Hasn't this world order existed? Like if we're talking about the Brotherhood of the Stake or the Illuminati, hasn't it existed since the dawn of man, or the Atlantis, or whatever you want to say? Hasn't it been around forever?
Yeah.
So, I mean, how do y'all feel about that? Most time when people think of the New World Order as something that's already is going to happen in the future, heck, it's already happened. We already live under the World Order. It
reminds me of what Neil Kramer calls empire, and some other guests who were talking about magic too, like talk about how angels are always pushing empire. And I feel like that's kind of what you're saying too. This has been around forever.
My thought is, it has to do more so, yes, all of that's absolutely true. I agree with that. But it has to do with the turning of the ages. And so if you look at astrology as as timekeeping, and part of what this group does is they utilize the timekeeping of the changing of the different ages and the different signs. And so when they're talking about the New World Order, they're talking about the next version of it. And so if you look at like the age of Aquarius, for example, that's technology, that's group, that's age of Aquarius is also the gender ambiguity, because you have the symbol of it is a male as a water bearer, which is a traditional female job. So you have a switch of genders right there. And it is a air sign, but it is the symbol of a water. And so air sign is again like a masculine symbology, and water's feminine. So this is the only sign where you see this different play of the different genders, albeit not necessarily in terms of in human bodies. So when you listen to them talking about technology, and you listen to them talking about the different gender ambiguity 700 years ago, it's because they're talking about the archetypes. They're talking about the archetype to come. This is the new order. This is where we're going. Or at least that's the way how I see it.
So they're going to destroy natural, which is, the two genders are going to destroy that, and instead they're going to make an amalgamation, a perfect human embodiment of everything. Instead of destroying the feminine and masculine, they want to complete it as one, so that to them they feel like it's perfect. Is that what you're getting at, Michael?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends upon, maybe the individual. I mean, there's certainly the idea that the hermaphrodite is the most divine of all human expression, because it has both male and female.
But usually can't give life, though. I mean, they look at the hermaphrodite as the divine expression, but we're looking at it from a human standpoint. It can't give life. So
I agree with you.
It's flawed in that regard, even if they look at it that way. So when they try to move to transhumanism, where we're both ambiguous or are having even no gender at that point, what would make it? It's the masculine and the feminine, and it is a part of us. And is it a denial of that once you reach that point?
It does seem like they supposedly worship the natural order of things, so it's really strange that they would want to destroy it.
Well, it's inverted, right? And so you're inverting. You still are understanding what you're inverting. There's definitely a play within the natural order and an inversion of the natural order. I mean, I'm certainly not supporting anything. I'm just
I know.
Supporting from the front lines.
Yeah, I know. I know you're not. I'm just saying that's what they want. Is they want that inversion. They want to take what is natural and make it unnatural, and that's what they strive through a lot of this stuff. Have you ever heard of the a little bit, I guess, a shorter time period. You ever heard of the Strauss-Howe generational theory, Michael? Okay.
Is that the four turnings?
The four turning, yeah. The turning
yeah.
cycle.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I like that a lot.
When you see a lot of, they ferment strife and social justice at the beginning, and eventually leads to a clampdown or some sort of cataclysm that forces people to draw within themselves and break further bond of society. Each turning, it's been that way. You know, like, for example, the beginning of, let's go back for the New World, they call it, which begins with the Puritans and ends with Enlightenment, you know, or even the most millennial generation, the most new one ends with baby boomers to Homeland, which is the current. And so what did the Homeland have to, have to deal with? They've had to deal with Obama. They've had to deal with, the last part of Bush. Our generation, well, it depends on how your age is. My generation, the millennials, we had to deal with 9/11, So, we're moving more towards this. It's just a cycle of them constantly fomenting fake outrage and fake freedom and fake social justice, and then causing some sort of cataclysm, which we have to draw back, and then casting rules onto that to reduce any natural freedoms that we would have. I mean, that's been going on since forever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's like you were saying, Lindsay. It's like there's an understanding of the natural order. Like there's a predictability, both or somewhat of predictability, obviously within the natural world, and that includes human beings. And so you can control generations. I mean, when you're thinking 300, 3,000, what have you, years in advance, there's an understanding, there's a plan. This is going to lead to this, is going to lead to this, is going to lead to that. And, it's the never ending story.
That's my favorite book. So maybe you can clarify for me, Michael, I've never been able to understand. Are we in the age of Aquarius still, or is it just starting, or is it ending, or like, where are we? Do you know? I never, no one.
Like all things, it's, so you can look at it culturally, and it's being suggested that this would be it, coming first from the song, from the musical Hair, but then also the final scene in the 40-Year-Old Virgin, when you can watch 40-Year-Old Virgin with that lens. So if you recall the very last scene, it has them all dancing to the Age of Aquarius.
Yeah.
And so you go and see that. But then if you go and you take astrology and astronomy from a very literal perspective, and the supposed definition of the turning of the ages is going to be when a certain constellation is in the sky at the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere. Well, Aquarius isn't supposed to do that for another 100 years or so. So, I mean, the question I ask myself is what we're seeing like so all of these different like astrological archetypes have different expressions. You could have an expression which makes us feel good and maybe is a very positive expression, some which isn't. And there's what it seems like what's happening is we are experiencing as a culture and as a society, all of these different archetypes are coming into reality, and they're tending to come into reality in what I would suggest is really not in a dark way. So maybe this is, to the point John was making, this is just like an artificial layer on top of like the matrix that astrology is. I mean, astrology in itself is still a matrix. I mean, that doesn't mean there's not value in it, but it's got rules and it's got limitations. And so I don't know if this is an actual thing or if this is something which is just completely created, but undoubtedly the people who are controlling the mechanisms of society, like this is the timeline they go by, and these are the archetypes or the instructions which they are encouraging to manifest.
Well said, nuanced answer.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Well, I guess so. Let's get back to the DuPonts, who are probably trying to use all of that to their advantage, and laying even more matrices on top of it. What we talked about some of their earlier power plays or the ways that they've kind of maneuvered society. Was there anything else you guys want to throw in that pile? Or should we move on to...
I think we should move on. I mean, right. I think we covered it.
So we've got some name changes. The only things I saw were just various different spellings and capitalizations of DuPont, except DuPont de Nemours, I believe is the name.
So and they would also name their children after each other quite frequently.
And
quite frequently.
Super incestuous, right?
Like most families at that age, you know, and wealth, yes.
Status. All right, so what about the famous DuPonts and their roles in history? We got a couple of those too.
Yes, a lot of them were, you know, were senators within Delaware.
Yeah, they're all from Delaware.
You know, families. So you got Coleman DuPont, you got Henry DuPont, and a lot of them were Republicans, and they still are to this day.
Why would that be surprising to people? You were saying that would be surprising.
Because a lot of when people think, especially in today's political climate, when we're all talking about Hillary Clinton and John Podesta and you know, liberals, you know, a lot of people get into that left-right paradigm. They kind of forget how much both sides of the left-right paradigm, you know, they're equally is messed up.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's hard to think, when you're thinking of Illuminati bloodline, you know, a lot of people in modern days would think, oh, they're probably leftist globalists, you know, but the DuPonts are a rare exception. They are more nationalist. So they're more right. Because when you think of Rothschild, you think left, right? You think liberal, you know, environmentalists, like many of the Rothschild children are, banking. You know, so you think, you know, left a lot, you know. But the DuPonts were more right. They're more Republican.
See, I just always assume they're all on both sides, and that
they are. But I'm just talking about they're all at the top. They're all in cahoots.
They're all
you know, there is no left-right paradigm. That's a lot of people wake up.
Just appear.
Yes, but if we're looking at strictly of, like, for example, Pierre. We talked about Pierre DuPont earlier. I'm going to talk about Pierre DuPont IV. Who was in the U.S. House of Representatives for Delaware and became governor of Delaware too. Well, he was a long-term member of the Council for National Policy, which is the rights version of the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations. Of course, at the top, they're all connected. They all have the same agenda to march us for the New World Order. But that being said, you know, they are part of this right-wing think tank similar to the CFR. Everybody's heard of the CFR, but no one's heard of the CNP. Well, Pierre DuPont was in there in the late 80s and a little bit in the mid to late 90s, too. He was part of the Council for National Policy and was pretty high up within it. So, yeah, I mean, you know, they've held a lot of leadership roles within Delaware and, you know, affecting the United States legislative branch, too, as representatives from Delaware as well.
Nice.
And so, and also going back to, you know, famous DuPonts, and certainly there's a long line politically. And then talking into pop culture, the fox chaser, you know, we talked about that a little bit earlier.
You have John DuPont.
And then another DuPont. And again, this is just a snapshot in terms of understanding in real world, like, you know, this is really how it happens. A snapshot is, I want to say this story was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. There's a DuPont heir whose name was Robert Richards, who was convicted of, like, raping his cousin, a young girl, and he got off scot-free. And so that was, like, you know, famous or infamous, I guess that would be a better word, but particularly in the mid-Atlantic where the DuPonts are mostly concentrated. I mean, that was a pretty big story.
Gross. That is how it happens. They basically do whatever they want.
So it's been since, you know, DuPont was, you know, they founded the DuPont company back in I think it was the late 1800s, a gunpowder manufacturer from that. You know, you get all, you know, you get with respect to bloodline Illuminati, a majority of them are probably insane, right? I mean, you know, let's be real here. So, they've been manufacturing death since forever, and I guess that's what you get. I guess it got caused a major karmic burden that eventually you can't take it. So you have, like mentioned John DuPont earlier, of him going, Foxcatcher team, going crazy and shooting Mark Schultz, Olympic gold medal winning wrestler. He killed him. Sadly, it was a homicide. Actually, John DuPont was.
This is the thing that there's the movie about. Is that
yes? Yes, he was found guilty for the murder, but he was a little bit crazy. So he got to serve out the rest of his days in a very posh mental institution.
That's nice. So I can just kill who I want and just go to a very nice little resort
instead of a prison.
Dude, I'm down. Just joking.
So there's an interesting backstory to that as well. I mean, this is stuff you can't really verify. So you got you're familiar with Jay Parker, right?
Yes.
No.
So Jay Parker, he tells the story of how his mother was one of the MK Ultra style handlers of John DuPont, and basically been programmed for it, or at least you could see some beginnings of like major psychological fragmentation, which is going to happen at an early age. Whether or not that's true or not, which certainly seems to, there's a lot to suggest that maybe it is. What is true is John DuPont held a great deal of sway within the DuPont company, and then also the size of his fortune. And by putting him in this situation, he lost all of his money or control over his money. So there's also this history within the family of incredible of battling for different power and money, and very, very cutthroat in terms of how far people would go. And John was put away in this nice mental or prison.
And he was stripped of his money too, wasn't he?
And they took all of his money.
Well, like I know we all might have some issues with our families, but if you know for sure your family is out to get you, like I can't imagine the psychological shit that you're going to go through from that. Like so unsafe. You've never been safe.
That's the whole point of the MK Ultra programming, is to create that foundation for how you go through life. Is that the very people that you need to trust are the least trustworthy people of them all. And pain is love and all this sort of stuff.
So disturbing.
Yeah, and I have heard too, maybe what you're alluding to, Michael, there's a possibility that John DuPont was activated, and that's why he killed, he murdered Mark Schultz.
So what was that?
It was a way for his family, for his other brothers and sisters to gain monetary control of DuPont.
It's not like that guy was some sort of a special target. It was just.
I mean, he was the guy who, now I will say this: John DuPont did have an obsession with Mark Schultz. Okay, possibly, maybe had a crush on him too.
They were in love,
but I don't think it was reciprocated. But yes, it was definitely was not healthy. It was not a healthy. I'm gonna have you train through the Olympic team. It was a little more than that.
Obsession is probably never healthy. Let's be honest.
But yeah, there's a possibility, like Michael, they have been mentioning, that they could have activated John.
Certainly a possibility.
It's always a possibility.
So how does any of this tie in with the Society of the Cincinnati? Did we already mention that? Or do you guys know?
I don't think we did.
Because I feel like that's one of the ways that the DuPonts have specifically maneuvered, especially early American creation of, like, the thing that Fritz Springmeier brings up is that the Society of the Cincinnati was key in changing from a confederation of independent states into a more strong central government, which is very problematic.
That is true. That is true.
And
yeah,
Society of the Cincinnati is something I hadn't heard of until Derek Murphy, what's up, Derek, if you're listening, brought it up in connection with some stuff that he's going to come on Rogue Ways sooner or later and talk about in his area. But I didn't know anything about them, and so I was kind of surprised to have them come up here again. So maybe they're connected to the DuPonts.
So it's probably, the DuPonts. Yeah, I mean, they were, but it was probably just further influence of going away from what because I mean that was the grand debate versus the founding fathers was more of a centralized government, more of a libertarian type government.
So they were pushers towards that central control.
Yeah, and of course that made it through. Alexander Hamilton, thank God, was never president of the United States, even though most people know he's on the dollar bill, but he was never president. He was, first bank of the United States. He was a big push for that and everything, and there was a lot of debates of doing that. But yeah, I mean, with central bank comes control.
Yeah. So their methods of control, they've got their banking, they've got the pushing towards a strong central government. We hit on weapon production. They have some sort of finger in the educational control. Anything else for their just overall methods of controlling society or people?
Hospitals. I think in one of the slides, which I showed, and this is from like 1984 from a book which I
show those now.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can. Let me see.
Let's do it.
Big.
Here's.
So this is a slide from a book which was titled "The DuPont Dynasty Behind the Nylon Curtain." I believe that it was initially published in 1984, and it was banned or blacklisted, however you want to say that. And so this publishing house, Forbidden Bookshelf, has republished a lot of these books which have been banned, and it's a fascinating and very, very well researched book. And it's primarily, or it does a lot, goes really deep into the politics and into the business aspect of the DuPont company, because you can't really separate the DuPont family from the DuPont company. And so this is a list of their $1 billion biomedical business. So again,
wow, it is. It really is. Wow, this is something I've never seen this before.
Wait, are you guys looking at the same thing I'm looking at?
No, we're looking at the one that is the DuPont's $1 billion biomedical business. It's a DuPont corporation, producing textile for operating room apparel, polymer for tamping, evident packaging, like packaging for like syringes and stuff like that. Make sure it's tamper proof.
I can't see it.
Michael really found something here. Let me tell you, this is something I've never seen this.
The thing which I find interesting is on the right, underneath Irving Shapiro, it lists the Hospital Corporation of America. And so HCA, and this is 1984, which is so mind-boggling. This is the private organization which owns all the hospitals. So they had a large stake in that. And if you think about it in terms of like monopolies, you got your vertical monopolies and your horizontal monopolies. They have all the products, and then they also have the actual hospitals who are going to go and buy it. So when you think about influence, I mean, it's the same way with what the Rockefellers, I normally think about them as it relates to control over education. We can see this as it relates to medicine. It's like, we're making everybody sick with our Teflon or what have you, or like we're blowing them up with our guns, and we've just got our hands everywhere. So I guess really the purpose of this is just an indication of the control, or at least access to control when it needs to be, regard of being able to infiltrate whatever plan may be in the works.
So I'm sure, Michael, that the DuPont family had a connection with the Rockefellers, and that the Rockefellers also influenced modern medicine through many of the production of petrochemical medications, like antillaide from Standard Oil. As well as the Flexner report written by Abraham Flexner. It was funded by the Carnegie Foundation, the Rockefellers, which destroyed naturopathic and homeopathic colleges and completely set up modern medicine as we know today, that's taught from the schools. So it's just, all the families coming together to screw us over in one way or another.
It's so hard for me personally, because I suffer from chronic pain, and I don't want to die from fucking opiates, and I'm not going to be high all day every day. And so what can I do? I can use naturopathic, but it's so hard. We're finally to a place where if you have really good insurance, you can get access to it, I guess, if there's anybody left who actually like understands it and uses it. And I'm lucky enough that I can get some of it, but like, fucking, we were there at some point and we've just been stopped, over and over again, and how many people suffer all the time from this bullshit.
And I'm not against modern medicine. I just think it's used by these families as a profit center motive only.
Yeah.
And because of that, that's what you get. I mean, when you look at this DuPont thing, they produce the biomedical instruments. Through Indo laboratories, they produce prescription drugs.
Yeah.
Through New England Nuclear, they gave the elements, produced elements for the radioactive tracers, which a lot of them are cause a lot of health issues and stuff like that. When you get like iodine-131, for example, or gadolinium,
But they didn't just promote all that shit. They also stopped the good shit from happening.
Yeah, so you get merchants of death pretty much. So instead of you get a freedom of choice where a person could go see a conventional doctor or go seeing a naturopathic doctor, you don't have that. Instead, you just have conventional only, and this is what you're left with. You're left with DuPont, Rockefeller, medicine, and that's what you're going to get.
John, I want to just encourage you. You mentioned the Flexner report. That is one of the most fascinating families out there. They're 3 brothers. Asterisk this for your research if you're not familiar with them. Those 3 brothers are behind. They were all backed by the Rockefellers. They're behind. Your mind's going to be blown when you see what they're behind.
I will, because I did research on Abraham Flexner. I read Flexner's report. I didn't know about the other brothers. I must have somehow missed that. But yeah, Abraham Flexner, his report pretty much led to how modern medicine is taught, the schools that were accredited. And it was bad because, African Americans, they got a real raw end of the deal because only 2 African American colleges were allowed to teach medicine, Howard University being one. And because of that, there was a lot of, Flexner also believed that African Americans were not intelligent enough to be doctors, that they could be barely taught surgery, if that. So pretty much their doctors should only be taught hygiene practices only. And so that was what was taught at the medical colleges after that, like at Howard for African American doctors was, just basic medicine. And women that were also taught at a lot of the naturopathic and homeopathic colleges, like Samuel's Homeopathic College up in Philadelphia, Hannerman's College. Women were taught there; they were treated as equals. And then after Flexner, that didn't happen
because we're not smart enough. Our boobs make us dumb.
So, and I again, I'm not going to say that I'm for 100% dissolution of the family unit, but I do think women should have a choice, though. And so you get the positives and the negatives with everything. Is so that's they gave women not a choice to become doctors anymore because there was less schools. Therefore, women were just you're not supporting this, man. Go somewhere else. They need to be taught medicine, and that's what they were left with. It was the same, sadly, for the end. So. Flexner really screwed a lot of minorities. From this Flexner report, conventional medicine really set them back.
Well, we should trigger all the SJWs to hate the DuPonts because of their support of this shit. But Michael, was this document that you found that is so amazing, and the ones that you've shared that we're going to look at some point too? Can we put those all in the Eyes Open group and get like a folder in there so people can look at them at their leisure as well?
Can I do that? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, like can we share them and we'll put them up there for people so they can look at them?
I'm not certain I know how to do that. I could try to do that.
Not right at this instant, just so people who are listening know they can look at them later.
Definitely so. I want to say one thing to John. One of the Flexner brothers, he was the head of Rockefeller's eugenics research program.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. It doesn't surprise me.
The other guy is the founder of the American Advanced, I think the International Advanced School in Princeton, which is where like John von Neumann and Einstein and all these guys came together. That family is crazy.
Remember, people, just like Michael was saying, eugenics have been around forever. Unless we forget in America, eugenics was very popular with the right. Abortion was very popular with the right and with Christians.
Very popular
in the 1920s and the 1930s.
Allegedly, Bill Gates.
Of course, now it's completely flipped to the other side, where now you have, liberals, quote unquote, supporting it. But I'm just trying to say that, they are the ones that support it. Yeah. Population control and everything else. It's just a dividing. It's a way to get us arguing for now in eternity, just like everything else is.
And if any of my students are listening right now or watching this, go look up eugenics. EUGENICS.
And remember, if anybody's listening to, Margaret Sanger was for reducing the African American population, and it was a sad day when Martin Luther King Jr. got the Margaret Sanger Award.
It's Margaret Sanger is the Planned Parenthood lady, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. God, it's all so disgusting.
She was for reduction of population of African Americans. Yep.
What a sleazy hoe bag. So, I think we already touched on a lot of the locations that are important to the DuPonts. We talked about France. I think we hit on Delaware. I saw something about Silverton, Oregon, and I just am starting to feel like all of Oregon is probably a satanic hotbed. Who knows? But what other locations have you guys thought of?
I do want to mention real quick that the DuPonts, just like any the right-wing involvement with Nicaragua and Iran-Contra, Michael shared this diagram with me that was in this book about the DuPonts Association with Summit Aviation and dealing with a lot of planes for the transportation of arms and stuff to Nicaragua. So I've never seen this before. I was unaware of the DuPont's involvement in there, but it doesn't surprise me with their affiliation with the Council for National Policy. So yeah, I just wanted to, to throw that out there. And to begin, before everybody says, well, John's harping on the right like he always does. Everybody else harpers on the left, people. I've just tried to make it a little bit more balanced. They're both, the higher ups that represent both sides are both messed up people. Yeah. Okay. So, but yes, yeah, the DuPonts were involved with the Iran-Contra affair.
You harp on the right side of politics and the left side of spirituality.
I always get enough that I bash the right too much that I don't talk about globalism as much as I should. But I just wanted to put it out there that yes, I'm aware that Hillary Clinton and George Soros and all the rest of their ilk, I'm aware that they are evil people.
Yes.
Okay?
You're not unfairly biased.
No, not at all.
All right. What do you think, Michael? Locations.
Now, if now's a good time, I'd like to talk about Wilmington, because
yes,
Wilmington and the DuPonts are hand in hand. That's where they all live. It's the headquarters of where DuPont is located as a company, and I'd like to share a little bit of my personal experience with that, and then specifically something which I see there. I could be off base, but I have pretty good instincts, and I mean, I've been wrong before, but I want to show you this crazy sort of setup, which is just like right in front of everyone. If now would be a good time for me to share.
Yeah. So unfortunately, it's going to show when I talk, but you can describe it, and then I can start about it and pull it up.
Well, first I want to give a little background information. So Wilmington, Delaware, if you're not familiar, it's located probably about 20 miles south of Philadelphia.
Yes.
or 95. And it's a city of maybe 300,000, 200,000 if you include all the suburbs. And though I've never lived, I lived there for 3 months about 4 years ago. And it was the strangest place I lived, and it's hard to put your finger on it. But there was this general, it's not so much like it was cookie cutter. There was just something off about it. And
it's weird, isn't it, Michael? Like, I've only been there twice, driven through 95, going to Philadelphia and eating at the Chipotle there. But it reminds me of a lot of the town that I'm from, Fayetteville, North Carolina, where you expect Wilmington, Delaware to be all like very nice, and there's a lot of rich people that live in the area, right? But when you go there, it's kind of just like strip mall-y, and it has just a really odd sensation to it. Is that how you felt about it too? Like,
very
it seemed
much
like
on the odd sensation. I'd almost describe it like, I was thinking about that before this talk today. Like, because I didn't really have the words to describe it.
It's almost Agenda 21-ish in the way that the city is present. The city is presented, right? Would you agree with me on that? Like, it kind of
definitely there's some elements of that, particularly with the park systems. In fact, I would say that's probably the best thing which they have is like how it works with the parks, like how they have everything, how they have their state parks bumping up against like the residential living, which is in some way really nice, but it's also it's keeping everyone encapsulated. The point I was trying to make is there's a general like lack of spark,
Yeah, there is. It's like
general
weird.
malaise
The
of,
lack of culture.
human beings. And I'm not trying to like, I mean, the wonderful people that live in Wilmington, I'm not going to say anything like that, but on a large level. So like that was my initial sense. The second thing I noticed was, and this was pointed out to me by the woman who I was living with, every night around 3 o'clock, this hum. You can hear it throughout the entire city.
Wow,
It was this
really?
low hum, but it's not like the hum if you've ever seen like the hums which you would see on YouTube.
It's more of electromagnetic hum, I would assume, right?
I thought it sounded mechanical.
Yeah, I was going to say more like electromagnetic
Yes.
hum.
So there was that.
Yeah,
and then
it was weird. When I went there, I had that feeling that the EMF was stronger. It was affecting me, which I know that's woo-woo, but it was weird. Like, I really did not like stopping there. Both times that I stopped there and ate at Chipotle, because I have celiac disease and there's only certain places that I can eat at, you know? And both times I stopped there, I was like, I didn't really know much about Wilmington, Delaware at that time. And I was like, this place is just, my tinnitus was worse. It just felt weird.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like a spiritual thing. It was to some degree, but it was also like a mechanical, like, eerie, like I can't explain it. Like it was different. It's weird, man. It really weird. Like I like Philadelphia. Philadelphia has a lot of occult stuff to it too. Okay, but Philadelphia really didn't give me that vibe. You know, it gave me maybe a spiritual occult vibe a little bit to some degree. But Wilmington was like an attack from all fronts. Like as soon as I got there, I was like, I do not want to be here.
But we know that we've seen government military documents and different oh my god, patents and stuff that like we know they have technology to use EMF radiation to make us feel certain ways and even hear certain things or whatever. So it's not that woo-woo to say that perhaps in Wilmington there's something like that going on. Maybe that's even that sound is like, you know, just happens to be at the witching hour that it's like.
So I'm going to suggest that's exactly what Wilmington is. I'm going to say Wilmington is a company town. It is the ultimate company town, and it's the company DuPont town. And what DuPont does as an organization, which is a reflection of the family which has founded them, which is still pulling the strings, they are experimenters. And so what you see, and this is what I'm going to suggest, what Wilmington is a large social, physical experimentation. And
I see that. I've
seen that in many different ways. And I'm going to go show you where it is.
That's very agenda.
And here's another thing too, Mitch. I want to mention to you is the roadways in Wilmington, Delaware. Not like the city, not like the neighborhood streets or anything like that, but the actual highway system there. It was very weird how it connected to 95 and how it was very open at the same time, but how it was in one direction in the same time too. It was very weird. And did you notice that too as well? Like, it's weird. Like you expect Wilmington to be like how Raleigh's planned, as far as Raleigh actually has more population, but I still expect it to be for the city that it is and who lives there and the location it's in. I expected like this kind of more
better.
Like I expected it to be kind of like more of a like what you think of a metropolitan area, but it wasn't though. It was like Fayetteville, where I live, where it was kind of you just got to go to Delaware. Maybe I'm getting off in a tangent. You won't know until you go. But and also, what about that Dead Presidents bar? That came up on my gluten-free app, and I was like, "What the heck is this?" And so it's like, you know, a bar that like celebrates like all the presidents, and it's it was just weird. Like if you look at some of the art and stuff, and some of the things, I'm not saying it's a new Pizzagate or anything like that. It wasn't, but it was just really occultish when it comes to American history. And so it's really weird, and you get a lot of. That's kind of like how it feels. Like when you go to Philadelphia, you see a lot of Benjamin Franklin's influence and a lot of the occult influence, similar to you do in Washington D.C. But look, I've been to Washington D.C. and it gives me a very negative vibe too. nothing, no city I've ever been to has given me more of a negative vibe than Wilmington, Delaware. And I know that sounds like crazy, but I mean, it's true to me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
So I'm going to go in. I want to demonstrate, or at least given a theory. I'm going to give you a hypothesis. I'm going to back it up. So
they can make it so that everyone's seeing it.
I want to begin with, let's see what slide it is. Let's start with IG Farben 1.
Okay.
All right. So this is precedent. So IG Farben was the, if you're not familiar, it was the huge company which really drove the German economy after World War I and to the lead up of World War II. It was primarily a chemical company, and so they were probably the only company in the world that was better than DuPonts at the game. And all of the big American industrialists, the Rockefellers and the Fords, they all had like different relationships with
the Dulleses, Bush, Prescott Bush.
They all had relationships with IG Farben. And so IG Farben, they also had IG Farben Auschwitz, which was next to the concentration camp, and they were very well known for conducting human testing on all sorts of experiments on human beings. And we also know that DuPont they had business agreements with them. They were colleagues in a way. And so all I'm trying to do is I demonstrate a precedent of a company which DuPont did business with and probably aspired to be more like, and then also knowing that they did human experiments, because I'm suggesting that we're seeing that Wilmington, Delaware is in many ways a big human experiment. And you can see that some of the stuff that, I'm sorry, Lindsay?
Oh, sorry. I think my audio is delayed. I just said gross.
Okay. So now I want to go and we want to look at a map called, what's it called? Where is it? Experiment state. It's 2 experimental station -1.
There we go.
Okay. And so we have this stretch of land right here. And what we have is this collection of different entities. And this is just 1.5 miles separates it. So it's right next to each other. The first thing is called the experimental station. And this is DuPont's primary place for experiments. If you go and look at the next slide down, you can see the entrance to it. It's guarded. You'd think you're driving up to Langley or the CIA headquarters, and it's a very large complex. And this is where they do all like their regular, like run-of-the-mill experimentation to develop stuff like Teflon and wonderful stuff like that.
Why broken glass on the stone wall?
We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that.
Okay.
All right. So then right next to that, we have the AI DuPont Children's Hospital. And this is a nationally recognized hospital for children, and particularly for children of rare illnesses.
Am I on the right slide?
So if you have, like, if you're a parent and you have a child who has a rare illness, like it's a great benefit to you. And you know, I'm saying that with quotation marks, and I'm saying it not with quotation marks, just that you can send your child there because you have like the best doctors, the best research doctors, and this is where they want to go and see all of the rare diseases. And then across the street from that, you have the U.S. headquarters of AstraZeneca.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. I saw that in your Google Earth thing, and I was going to mention that. Okay. Well,
so what you see...
Got to give them the medicine.
Well, you're also seeing a very, very similar model to what IG Farben did during the times of World War II. And IG Farben, this is what all of Mengele's experiments, he was I don't know if he was exactly employed by by Farben, but they were connected. He was testing their medicine. So what we have here at the very least is the same sort of relationship through experimentation.
And you got J.P. Morgan Chase's headquarters not being too far either that I see.
I don't think that's their headquarters. I think that's just probably a branch office.
It says a corporate office of some sort. Interesting. At least on Google Earth, you might be right, but it might be a branch. But it's weird that it says corporate office.
Yeah, it's probably like, you know, it's where it's, yes.
And this is right off of 95, which is interesting
right off 95
because I've been here.
It's right there. If you go and you look at
I've been here. It's real. Yeah, you're right. I remember mentioning to my wife, yeah, I've been here. I remember mentioning to her that it was really creepy that the DuPonts would have a children's hospital.
It is creepy as fuck.
So it's going to get creepier. So then, but first, let's go look at 2-complex 2.
Oh.
Do we have that up?
Yep.
Okay, so then you see the circle on the right. That's the side, the upper right-hand corner. That is the entire experimental station complex. You can see it's quite large. And then you can see on the bottom is where the children's hospital is. And then on 2-DuPont complex, 2-DuPont complex, if we could pull that one up, you can see then how it relates to
yeah, on Google Earth, it just says DuPont ESL 400, DuPont ESL 353, badge office. Can't see anything.
Yeah, it's all blacked out. It's all blacked out.
Oh,
So the land for the hospital, which is adjacent to the experimental station, was the home of A.I. DuPont. And A.I. DuPont had, he built something which is known as the, I can't speak French, and I'm going to butcher this, so I'll do my best. The Noir.
Hey, I'm French descent, and I can't even say it, so go ahead.
So
You're excused.
So this is built upon his property, the Noir estate.
Yeah,
and
I noticed it. It's right next to the place. Why would you put that there? It's weird.
This is their land, and so this place is just like incredibly extravagant. It's a Versailles-inspired mansion. One of the things which we could go down to the slide, Lindsay, which is 3 Noir Estate. And one of the things that caught my eye is there's a sculpture of Diana the Huntress there.
Ooh.
And so Diana.
A Temple of Love. That's nice.
Yeah.
Diana.
This is on their estate right next to there.
Yes, this is on this. Well, it's the same land. It's that land. They gave a portion of it.
Yeah, they are right, literally next to each other. Like when Michael's saying it, he ain't joking. It's a half a mile to a mile at most. Like they are right. Like the children's hospital, the estate. The estate is in between the DuPont research and the children, but it is right there.
The estate came first, and then the DuPonts gave land for the other stuff. So they cut up part of the estate property, but the state is still there. And so what I want to demonstrate is the quality and the energy of the land prior to the establishment of the hospital. It's the same way how the UN is built on top of a slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
You know, that's the land. Like it's very, very significant from an esoteric perspective of knowing what was done on the land. So one of the things we see here is Diana the Huntress there's a sculpture, a very large sculpture of her outside. So Diana, many people might know her as the goddess of the moon. But actually, she's a triple goddess. Most goddesses are, particularly the big ones. They represent birth, life, and death. And then Diana the Huntress is obviously the death expression of the moon goddess. Okay, so we have that. So now we're going to go to the broken glass wall. Let's go to 3 embedded glass wall. That slide. And
okay. I'll just like that author also pointed out that the DuPonts, whoever built that place is full of hubris. They use my favorite word. Okay, go on.
This is a good word. I try to use that too. Use the word, not express it.
Right.
this wall, which you see here, and this runs along, I think this is Powder Mill Road is the name of the road, which is a pretty major road there. This is the wall that's surrounded the initial estate and everything done by the DuPont family in terms of like architecture and quality of materials. Everything is like the finest of the fine. And so I want to say this was built in the early 1900s. And on the top of this wall, which is 9 feet tall, embedded all the way around it is glass.
Why?
And so broken glass. So you can go up onto 3 DuPont broken glass, and you can see a close-up image of it. And it's you can see it around.
Because if they were trying to keep something in, they could have used cast iron. You know, they could use iron gate at that point.
Well, this reminds me of like when I travel in a lot of third world, it's like whatever other countries. This is what's used a lot because it's so cheap, it's so affordable. Like you're going to have glass around you.
But they don't. So there has to be an esoteric reason for this, and I know Michael's getting to it. I gotta know. You gotta tell me, bud.
Well, I'm going to tell you the two stories that are known. So there's if you were to go and read the historical story, the man behind it, A.I. DuPont, he was feuding with other DuPonts, and he wanted to keep them out of his property. So he put the glass. He had the glass put on the wall.
But he could have afforded iron, though, and iron would have lasted longer.
He could have afforded moats and dogs and like flame.
So why glass?
Well, this is what I'm thinking. Imagine you're like a DuPont. This is like 1912, and you're like so angry at your cousin or your uncle that you're going to go and storm the wall. Like, I'm not necessarily. I mean, maybe that's true. I don't know. I don't buy that story. So the other story is this. That it's just like what you said, Lindsay. I think you said this, that it's done to keep people in. And so the urban legend within Wilmington was from all of the DuPont children who were kept there, particularly those that had a lot of the side effects of genetic inbreeding, and they're always trying to escape.
Ah, so creepy.
But why would they use glass? Why wouldn't they use raw cast iron or something? I guess you're right. If it's children, you don't have to. But the glass looks so tacky, though.
It does look tacky.
You really can't see. You really can't see it. Like, you have to look closely. This is a close-up. I mean, it's more.
You know what? Maybe that's why, because you can't really see it very well. So if they put cast iron, people be like, "Why the heck is cast iron up there?"
You like take a walk next to that though, and you're going to be like, "What the hell?"
Oh, everyone knows about it in DuPont. There's no secret about it, but it's creepy as hell. So the point I want to make with all of this is like we've got this strange complex of one, like justice. I'm so glad John is on this call and he's been to Wilmington and he can attest like. There's something you can't quite put your finger on.
Yeah.
Off there. And then you have this world-class experimental station, which is right next to this world-class children's hospital, which is right next to this, at least the headquarters of a major European pharmaceutical company, the U.S. headquarters. And it's comes from a company which has dealings with other companies that have worked in this kind of underhanded way of doing all sorts of strange testing. And it certainly seems that the grounds that it's all built upon has some really kind of dark history.
Yeah.
And now I'll go one more and then I'll be done with this. And where is this map here? Let me find the map.
Oh, this is the one I was supposed to be showing a long time ago. My bad.
It's okay.
So now let's go to 2 experimental station to Arden. And let me know when that's is that pulled up?
Yes.
Yes.
So if you go and you look on where we have the Numar Estate is underlined on the left-hand side. That's where this whole section is. That yellow road, which you see is the road which has the wall of glass on it.
Mm-hmm.
This is, and then you look in the right-hand side, that's Arden, Delaware. So if you're familiar with all of the history which Jay Parker exposes of Arden, Delaware, we could see that this is less than 4 miles away.
Wow.
Now, I will say this. I am aware of Jay Parker. He was on Higher Side Chats. I've heard him beforehand. Is it, and I will cast a little bit of doubt, is it possible that Jay Parker's story could be possibly a little bit embellished, similar to, as much as I like, oh God, what's his name? The guy that was with Franklin later on, David Schurter. Is it a possibility that, his story just a little bit, Parker's story is just a little bit embellished, or just a little bit?
Of course, there's a possibility. I've been to Arden, Delaware twice. And
I've never been. I've only been to Wilmington.
It's actually quite charming. Arden, Delaware. I mean, the way it's set up, it's an artist colony. But that being there, if you think Wilmington has a strange quality, Arden has a strange quality, and my personal experience with it, and now's not the time or place to share it.
Are you sure about that?
You want to hear it?
I love to hear things, yes.
Sure, I'm curious if you're willing to tell.
All right, so I make art. I like to dabble's not the right word. I work consciously with what we would call the invisible world. I don't practice magic. I don't practice ceremonial magic, but I'm very
peeking behind the curtain.
That's always been part of my life.
I mean, I do that too. I peek behind the curtain too. I mean, you're not the only
word.
So when I was in Wilmington, Delaware, I was making something which I call the starboard, which is more or less an artistic representation of the zodiac, and I do astrological readings. So the first weird thing that happened was when I was making it, I was living with this woman, and she was a crystal healer. And she had a client. It was a referral from a psychotherapist, and it was a really troubled young man. And he had experienced horrible trauma, and as an adult, he was under the impression that he was God. And he was very, very intense and very, very intimidating. And the woman
it sounded like he might have been MK Ultra or a little bit of dissociative identity disorder or something. It's very common with that.
Something very traumatic happened to this young man. Mm-hmm. And I accompanied this woman to her sessions with him, and he responded unbelievably. After 2 months, there was an absolute a tangible change, which everyone was able to notice. Yeah. But here's the weird thing. Okay, so it was the very first session, and I was there, and basically all I did was I walked around with incense because the smell was so atrocious. And but I treated him with a great deal of respect. And that day there was a call from his mother. The mother called the woman, and she said that he wanted to speak to me, this young man. And I was like, this is odd. And I asked the mother, I was like, is this common? She's like, no, he's never said anything. He's never done this before. And so I get on the phone and I speak to him, and he says to me in his God voice, have you received the discs yet? And I'm like, yeah, I got the discs. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to resist. So I went along with him, and he's like, good, make good use of them. And then he hung up. And then I turn around and I'll show you a picture of the starboard, but the starboard is basically 2 discs, a 24-inch disc and a 15-inch disc. And I'm like, wow, that's friggin' weird. So this is where the story begins. So then I'm driving to Lancaster, Pennsylvania from Wilmington. This is about 2 months later. And I just downloaded the very first time I'd ever heard of Jay Parker, I downloaded his interview from Freeman Fly. No idea what I was going to listen to, and I'm listening to it. And he's describing all of this art in Delaware stuff. And here I am living in Wilmington. So the thing which was so strange about this was that night I was going to give my very first starboard session. And try to guess where I was going to do that starboard session. I'll give you a hint. It rhymes with Barden.
Barden.
So so first I get weird, like, the God disc message from the traumatized kid. And then I listened to Jay Parker for the first time. And the very night I'm going to be in Arden, and I'm going to be doing not only something with these discs, but it's got kind of like, behind the curtain flavor.
Yeah.
So then, I'm thinking, I'm like, wow, this is really strange. I told the woman who I was going with, like, the whole story, the woman I was living with at the time. But I did not tell the host, obviously, anything about the Jay Parker story, just because, in the event that what you're saying, John, it's just not polite, sort of. One, it's not polite, and two, if it is accurate, maybe it's not something I want to bring up.
Yeah.
So we're there, and the woman who the session was for was a very, very charming woman. It was her 60th birthday, and she's giving us the tour of the place. It's a small house, and then she tells me, this is actually the founder's cabin. I'm like, oh, the founder of Arden? It's like, yes, this is where he lived.
Wow.
So
you went to the root of it all.
Whether this is all coincidence,
there's no such thing.
I tend to agree. But, I'm also going to be skeptical of everything. And, like, to John's point, like, it's like, is there a chance? And I'm like, okay, yeah, there's always a chance. But there were actually four absolutely connected coincidences about that place. Now, the starboard session went fine. Nothing weird happened. No demons came through the window. I got out of there, and I was like, I'm never going to go there again. But there's
now, is it a possibility, though, Michael? I'm going to cast a little bit of doubt. Okay, is it a possibility that it was the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, that you now thought of Arden because you listened to that episode? And, like, let's say you never would have listened to that Jay Parker episode and you would have gone to Arden, you never would have thought anything twice about it.
Oh, you're absolutely right.
But it's a series of connections are still...
I do believe in synchronicities. I'm not going to say that I don't. But just like Benny Wills talks about in his QAnon episode, which yours truly had a little part in helping that.
Just a little dragon.
Just a little bit. But... Bader, Benny did talk about the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, and and so even I love to say, I see connections everywhere and stuff like that. As an INTP, that's normal, but some of these things you have to be. Is it just because you're more aware of it, or is it truly a synchronicity?
But that's the whole.
And I'm saying that your story definitely sounds like a lot of synchronicities together. I'm just saying, like you said, you got to be skeptical. You never truly know.
But this is the thing I always think about is, like, it doesn't matter because it's the same difference either way, whether you call it a synchronicity or you call it like a pattern that you noticed because of other patterns that you've noticed. It's still the same
True.
thing.
It still happens.
And you still have meaning that you come to because of it, which is the whole point. It's like a psychological level, a symbolic level, a spiritual level, but they're really all the same thing.
I agree with that. And I would say there's a greater chance of, like, absolutely nothing going on between the experimental station and the hospital and AstraZeneca, because that's an interpretation. That's me seeing, like, okay.
But I would actually say there's a greater chance. I'd look at the other and say there's a greater chance that you are right about that. I'd actually argue the counter narrative.
Well,
so that's funny. That's funny. You're going against your own hypothesis.
Well, no, I'm talking probabilities. I
believe in the probability that it's more likely that there is a connection.
The thing with the story I just told you, the fact that I listened, I had no idea I blindly downloaded the Freeman Fly. And the fact that night, which had been planned 3 weeks in advance, that I was going to be at the very place of that in the founder's cabin, Like, no, I mean, whether it means anything, I don't know, but that's not like me interpreting that occurred.
Oh,
That
yeah, that is true. Yeah,
100%
you're right.
occurred.
Your interpretation could be positive, negative,
But
spiritual.
is it a possibility that was made more a significance because you heard that episode, though?
That's actually the whole point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know, but I'm saying it's still...
Definitely. I was just trying to point out, like, in the beginning that...
Like, I didn't think of when I went...
experience in Arden.
Yeah, like I didn't think about when I went through Delaware, even before I knew... when I went through Wilmington, even before I knew about the DuPonts, everything like that, I still had the feeling that it was a really weird place, you know? Just like Wilmington, North Carolina, you know, Jay Parker says the name Wilmington, which of course probably has something to do with the DuPonts. He says the name Wilmington, or naming a town Wilmington, is usually a sign that they are part of the cult.
Or the ton. I think he said anything with the word.
Yeah, ton. But
yeah.
Yes,
which makes it even more broad, right?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, you're right though, man. That is a crazy story. Thank you for sharing it. That's insane, man. That's one of those stories that make you think, you know. It probably keeps you up at night sometimes thinking about that, you know.
And that weird stuff just happens in Delaware.
Yes. Are you find feathers everywhere you go? It looks like.
I certainly collect them. I've
only had that happen to be one time, which one day I'll tell the crazy story about that. That's a story for, well, that's separate. It's not, has nothing to do with Delaware. One time I'll tell that story. But yeah, one time, only time I ever found feathers, it has to do with child abduction in this area and picking up a hitchhiker and some guy trying to show me where it's happening and him getting out of the car. There's a whole bunch of feathers left in my car. It's a crazy story. My wife can back it up, where she just thinks that somehow
that'll be on the Rogueways genre review.
Yes, that will be there. But I guess, you know, that. Thank you for telling that story. That's crazy.
Yes, and maybe Michael will come back on and tell us more Michael Wan stories too.
I like Michael Wan stories; they're very interesting.
So let's get back to the DuPonts proper again. I think we kind of hit most of the stuff. What do you guys think the kind of DuPont's role is in the overall stranglehold on the world stage? Like, do you think it's different from any other family? Do you think they kind of have specializations, or do you think they're all kind of just
they're all working for some common objective? I don't think that like any of these bloodlines of the Illuminati, and I think there's probably more bloodlines of the Illuminati. You know, these are just the ones that Fritz Springmeier wrote about. I'm pretty sure they're, you know, he mentions Mergevinian, Disney. There's more than just the 13. I mean, you know, there's, you know, some people would add the Clintons, the Bushes. You know, you would start adding different bloodlines. But yeah, I think the DuPonts, if you're asking if they're more up at the top, like with the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and stuff like that, compared to like some of the rest of them, probably. And their influence hasn't waned.
Yeah,
like the
Astors seem to have been over hundreds of years. Yeah, the Astors seem like they're waning. Good point. You have any thoughts on that,
they're
Michael?
definitely top tier.
Yeah. I mean,
or top tier that we know about. You know, there's always, you know, you got the pyramid, and then you got the capstone, and there's the chasm in between. So like, we don't know what's on top. We don't know about the real top.
No one knows the real top. Once you found that, you really peeked behind the curtain. You saw the wizard. You know, once you've reached that part, you know, I don't know if your mind will be able to handle it at that point. But yeah, I agree with Michael. I think that they are powerful. They're definitely more powerful than Astors that you guys had talked about, at least currently. You know, when John Jacob Astor with the Titanic went down, you know, the Astors lost a lot of their. And one thing you guys forgot to mention, I don't think you guys mentioned last time in the episode about that real quick. There's some arguments that say that the reason why Astor was eliminated was for the lead to the foundation of the Federal Reserve. But yeah, the DuPonts are definitely powerful. There's no doubt about that.
When we talked about them going down on the Titanic, I think we connected to that.
I missed that. You guys had mentioned that may have been because for the foundation. Okay, whatever. Okay, sorry, I missed it.
We have to have a whole episode just on the Titanic because there's so many.
Okay, yes, there is. There is a lot.
Yeah.
But I mean, how do you feel, Lindsay?
I don't know, because like I said, I take in a lot of information and then I let it all go and I just hold on to the concepts. And so conceptually, I just know that they're evil fucks. They control through the same methods as we've kind of always been aware of once you get into this type of thing, which is like education, the press, the media, political organizations, secret societies, and, medicine, all the same sorts of tactics each time. But I have no way of knowing like which families are going to be more important than others, or if some families are more important than the others, or if that's just an illusion. And like you're saying, John, there's a lot more families than we know about even. And definitely either way, I am sure there's people behind the scenes or beings behind the scenes that we do not see and we don't know. And if we did, like you said, we'd either be insane or we'd be like doing something different than this.
There's probably families that we have never even heard of.
Right.
Everybody likes to vilify the Rothschilds, and I'm no defender. I'm not going to be like Alex Jones.
And maybe that's part of their role. Like maybe that's part of the DuPonts role and the Rothschilds role is to be more of like the public evil that we see and that we can point at and hate. And then that way it detracts from whoever or whatever else there is.
Yeah. It could be more of a frontline target, and we'll never know who's even pulling their strings.
Yeah. So then what would you guys want to say to people is the best way to kind of work against or resist or respond to the DuPonts and all?
Don't use Teflon.
Don't use Teflon.
The national day and age, you don't have to use Teflon. You can use coated cast iron for cookware. You can use stainless steel, even though stainless steel can cause nickel allergies. You do have enamel coatings now. You use glass cookware. You don't have to use Teflon. So just don't use Teflon. As much as you possibly can.
Whether you're trying to resist the DuPonts or whether you're just trying to stay alive.
Yes. You don't have to use that.
What do you think, Michael?
As it relates to Teflon or the DuPonts?
The DuPonts in general. Like, how would you suggest that people, if they're going to... the way I kind of think of it is how should you resist the DuPonts and their stranglehold on the world? But really, realistically, it's how would you respond to them in general?
Well, I mean, it's the same. It doesn't really matter whether it's the DuPonts or the banking system, what have you. I mean, I think that the point of for me at least, of these conversations is, just maybe having a little bit more clarity on the environment that we live in. And each time we can see, like, there's so much that goes on that is not true, that we begin to trust more and more our own senses, and things that are real, whether that's food experiences, what have you, and not get caught up in the traps that are put out there, whether that be the munitions or the wars which they put out, to the best we can. I mean, all we can do is try to navigate during these times with some degree of awareness.
Or conventional medicine, or left-right paradigms, or buying Teflon. Don't. We all should try, and we all give in to the system to some degree or another. I'm not going to say that I'm any different. I got a cell phone. I'm sitting. I have polypropylene mesh in me. Which was produced by the DuPonts. So I mean, it is what it is. But it's just trying your best. And I guess you guys would both agree with me on this, of trying to gain wisdom, try to gain a better understanding of the world around you, to try not to be a sheep, and try to resist within reason, peacefully, as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, I like the underlying of being aware of what's going on, like Michael was saying, to the best of your ability, because that'll allow you to do all those things you're talking about, John. And so talking about things like this and exposing them as much as possible, even though I won't remember all the names and dates that we have talked about, understanding those conceptual frameworks is helpful for you, because you can see it more and more the more you look at it, and you can stay away from the worst of it the more and more. And none of us are perfect. I sometimes drink Coke Zero because I'm an idiot.
Well, I mean, none of us are perfect. We all do. No, if we were, we'd be Yeshua at that point. None of us are perfect in that regard. So we all make mistakes. It's part of the human experience, So it's just, I guess the most thing I can say is look, the DuPonts, they're right. They're Republican. They're conservative. Okay, they're nationalistic. All right. So you got if you identify yourself ideologically that way, then there are people that are in the control that represent your ideological just as much as people on the left. You know, it's all left, right. It doesn't matter. When it comes to the elite, they're all using that paradigm to divide us because at the top, they are all lockstep in with each other. You know, it's just how it is.
True that. Any last words of wisdom you guys want to share with everybody, or pointing them towards any of your own endeavors?
I mean, I guess if you want to, you know, if you want to, I'm going to give a shout out to the episode that Lindsay did with my boy Benny.
Oh, that was
go
really
take
good.
a listen to it. Me and Benny. Benny's a good dude. He's a solid dude.
Super good person.
I'm hopefully will soon go to hopefully be on one of the Joy Camp podcasts with Benny. Hopefully soon.
I didn't even know that.
Yes, the Joy Camp does. You know, subscribe to Joy Camp on YouTube.
Yes, do it.
Benny's the man. But definitely go back and listen to the interview. You did a great interview with him, Lindsay, a lot. And you know, of course, if everything, you know, broaden your mind.
I made him cry, so
broaden your mind more than Alex Jones. That's one thing I want to listen. Alex Jones is a stepping stone. Remember that pretty much everybody that tells you something, even to me, has some sort of spin, even if we want to or not. It's just a part of life through the information that we're giving us. Research everything on your own. Don't take any word that we say. You know, even Fritz Springmeier, for example, you know, there are a lot of people who say if you listen to Patton and his with Fritz Springmeier, possibly of how he left his wife and everything, and how he tended not to necessarily be a good person. Eventually was, you know, charged for was it bank robbery? Yeah, bank robbery and sent to prison. Of course, some people say he set up and everything, like Fritz was and everything.
I thought it was just tax evasion.
Was it tax evasion?
I'm pretty sure it was tax evasion and that it was trumped up charges.
Impossibly, but I swore he got charged for some bank robbery that they said that he didn't do. But yeah, I with Fritz, I do like a lot of his work. But you know, like I said, he left his wife for Cisco Wheeler. A lot of people said that he used Cisco Wheeler. It's just a lot. You know, with everything, there's pros and cons. You know,
I'm going to tell you something right now. If you look at my past, you're going to be like, "Damn, that lady is fucked up." Like, if you.
But the thing is Fritz Springmeier's bank robbery thing was after that.
Maybe, I don't know. I'm not saying Fritz is one thing.
His criminal conviction was like in the late 2000s.
You have to judge people by their works to some extent, but you also have to like sift out the information from
exactly. That's what I'm saying is with Fritz's stuff, with anyone's stuff, you have to suss out what is true and what line you're giving, whether it's on purpose or not. You know, we try to give you the most genuine information, obviously. Right.
Yeah.
But even the information that is fed to us, some of it is probably bullcrap too.
That's a very good point.
Bill Cooper did a lot to expose that, and he mentions a lot. That's why he publishes the Learned Elder Protocols of Zion and Behold a Pale Horse. Because with everything, even if it's a fictional account, there is some truth with it, even if it is a work of deception. Okay, so you know you can replace the Jews in the Learned Elders and Protocols of Zion with Illuminati, and it would still somewhat ring true with the information in there. Okay, so like what I'm saying is be wary of people who don't tell you that, like Alex Jones, Jeff Rentz. Those people really don't tell you. Where Cooper did, Josh Reeves did. Look for people who are willing to admit that they don't know for sure and they could be wrong. Exactly, and people that tell you to research everything and don't insult you for being a neckbeard. That's what I'm saying.
It's just such a good inside joke at this point. I'm sorry. Okay. And go to fixyourgut.com and buy John's book, Fix Your Gut.
No, you don't have to do that. If you want to, you can. It's a very good book, a lot of people say. So.
Michael, anything else you want to add to the...
It's interesting and it's kind of fun to look at all this dark stuff. And it's also there are psychological and spiritual pitfalls of feeding your mind with all of the darkness. And You mentioned Neil Kramer earlier, and there was something which I heard from him like years and years ago, but it always stuck with me. He said, go in, do your due diligence, and then get the fuck out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen. I love it. I love that man.
Fun, be nice. Be as manners matter. You know.
Yeah.
Be what you want to see out there.
Research this stuff, but don't let it become your life.
Yes.
You have, because if you do, it will drive you mad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michael, is there anywhere where people can go to get more of you?
You could go to, I've got a whole bunch of videos on susquehannaalchemy.com. I think there's some videos on YouTube, maybe about half as many. I just started getting into Instagram. You know, I'm a little behind the curve, but I found that to be a really nice platform to share the information because it's so visual. So if you're interested, you can do that as well.
Awesome. Cool. And we'll see you around for sure. So friends, this has been your electric, concentric, analog dose of wisdom, according to our badasses in chief, John Brisson. John, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me as always, Lindsay.
And Michael Wan. Michael, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, John. I enjoyed the conversation quite immensely.
Thank you, Michael. It's good having you as well.
So much love in this room. Don't forget to check out both of their sites and works as you continue your travels and studies. And most importantly, don't forget your own power. The world seems wicked and dark place, and it is easy to look around and see traps, schemes, and games cast upon every surface. But all of that is reflection and illusion when it comes down to it. There is something in you that is more important and more divine than any game some master masons or some satanic families can play. And that is exactly what they fear for you to know. I love you all. I say it too much, I think. Too much to let you forget your worth, so don't let me down. Celebrate your beautiful selves and go do something loving and true. And until next time, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first.